Can you rewire your brain in just 3 days? No, you can't. I'm Johnny, and this is Zen Mindset. So recently, I was at a training, and one of the other facilitators was explaining to the group how you could rewire your brain in just 3 days using a mantra. And the truth is, you can't. You cannot undo 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years of intrusive thoughts, limiting beliefs, or anxious thinking in just 3 days. It doesn't work that way. And this is the problem I have with the wellness space at the moment, this mental fitness arena. Because of the mental health crisis, everybody is jumping on the bandwagon, throwing around these platitudes and sound bites, and it's bullshit and crap, and it annoys me. You cannot undo 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years of intrusive thoughts, limiting beliefs, or anxious thinking in 3 days. And it doesn't help anybody. The reality is, you cannot undo all that damage in 3 days. You cannot think the same thing every day and expect results to be different, but also you cannot think something different for 3 days and expect the results to be different. You do have to rewire your brain. So I said to this trainer, what does rewire your brain mean? And he went, you know, man, rewire your brain. He didn't know what rewiring your brain actually was or mean. So what we're going to do is we're going to deep dive into what rewiring your brain is, how to do it, and what happens. But before we do that, we're going to get into another little term called neuroplasticity. Because in the wellness space, there's a lot of terminology thrown about, and the bigger the terminology, the fancier they seem. Neuroplasticity is a big one. Neuro meaning brain, plasticity meaning like plasticine, moldable and adaptable. And it's important because not that long ago, it was believed in your late teens to your early 20s that your brain was fixed. That was it. You couldn't grow your brain. It couldn't generate any extra thoughts or capacity anymore. But we kind of knew that was wrong, right? Because you know that you could learn to play the guitar in your 30s. You could learn a new language in your 40s and 50s. So we all kind of knew that that wasn't right. But now we know it isn't. Science now shows us with things like fMRI scans, we can actually see the brain can grow and adapt. And it shouldn't be that strange, should it really? Because you think about it, if you go down the gym and lift weights, your muscles get bigger and stronger. If you become a long distance runner, your heart gets more powerful and stronger. So why not the brain? And it all comes down to the bits of the brain that you can actually look at on YouTube. There's videos of Zen Buddhist monks, and they've done fMRI scans, and you can see the prefrontal cortex, this part of the brain is actually bigger and stronger. And this part of the brain is a really important part. We're going to jump into that very quickly now, because the human brain has quadrupled in size in the last million years, and it's pretty much down to this little bit. If you look at Australopithecus and the shape of the skull compared to hominids and then us, you can see that it's all down to this part of the brain. And the prefrontal cortex is fascinating. It is a remarkable strategist. It allows you to see into the future. And I know that sounds make-believe, but the prefrontal cortex is the reason why you've never tried custard on your roast dinner instead of gravy, because you can see into the future and you know those two flavors won't go together, one sweet, one savory. It's an awful idea. In a more relatable way, your prefrontal cortex is the reason why you might leave work late on a Friday, avoiding rush hour traffic and getting home at the same time. The prefrontal cortex is also why chess masters can preempt and predict what their opponent's doing and beat them and then become a chess master. The prefrontal cortex is a fascinating and incredible strategist. But we arm it. We tell it what to see in the future. And if you're having limiting beliefs, if you're anxious or frustrated or full of stress, that is what it will see. And what we need to do is rewire the brain, because even though the prefrontal cortex can be a remarkable strategist, if you're anxious or thinking negatively, it becomes a terrible doomsday prophet. And all it will see is disaster and doom. So this is the reason why we need to rewire the brain. So what does rewire the brain actually mean? The best way I can think to explain it is imagine two people either side of a river. They're shouting at each other because they're trying to share information, but the gap of the river is too great. So out of frustration, over time, they start putting rocks and boulders and bricks down in the river. Inadvertently, over a short period of time, they've built a bridge. And because of that bridge, information can cross quicker, faster, easier, and more powerfully. Well, if you imagine those two people are synapses or brain cells, that bridge is a synapse. So neurons that fire together, wire together. We're going to go to a quick video. If you have a look at this video now, you are actually going to see neurons firing together and wiring together. What you're seeing here is two neurons, and this is you basically thinking. And they're trying to reach out, they're trying to communicate, they're trying to touch, and they're stretching out, and they're stretching out, and this is your thought processes, and all of a sudden, ready, boom, we've got connection. And then you'll see that connection gets stronger and more permanent. And that is a synapse bonding between two neurons. How fascinating is that? You can actually see brains wiring and firing together. You can actually see rewiring of the brain. So how do we do it? And why is it important? Well, you've wired your brain ever since you were a child. The problem is you may not have wired your brain the way that you want your brain to be wired. And this can be down to various things. It can come down to traumas. You could lose your dream job. You might love your job and the money is amazing, but all of a sudden, poof, it's gone. And you could be thinking, oh my God, I'll never get another job like that. In fact, I'll never work again. I'm never going to earn any money. My life is over. I'm done. I'm never going to work. Well, that's what you're wiring your brain to think. You're wiring your brain to think negatively. That synapse will bond and you will forever see yourself in a negative way. You could lose the love of your life. They could be the most amazing partner, and then one day they're not your partner anymore. You can be heartbroken and you can think, I will never love again. Nobody's ever going to love me. Well, you can wire your brain to think that. And sometimes it's not even your thought, right? It can be trauma. It can be an event that goes into your shadow and into your subconscious. You could be a happy, bouncy child bouncing around and mum and dad are fighting and you're trying to cheer them up and you're 6, 7, 8 years old. And your mum or dad snaps at you. For God's sake, can you just be normal? Stop jumping around like an idiot. And your child brain receives, jumping around is not normal, I'm not normal, and I'm an idiot. So that the child that wants to be a superhero becomes the adult that doesn't want to talk in public. Because you've wired your brain to perceive and believe those things. So we need to rewire our brain for positivity. So how do we do that? Well, it's actually a lot easier than you would think. It comes down to things like meditation, mindfulness, and things like a gratitude practice. The problem is in the wellness space, we know these things. But outside of the wellness space, when people are anxious and they're trying to get better and heal, they think, well, that doesn't work, does it? What a load of nonsense, what a load of crap. How can thinking things and saying things and believing things actually change anything? It doesn't do anything. Thinking something doesn't make things real. Well, yeah, it does. And we're going to go into why that is now. So, we're going to stick with a gratitude practice because I do believe this is the most powerful, life-changing thing that you can do. And it takes 5 minutes first thing in the morning. And everybody, I believe, everybody can afford themselves 5 minutes before the day begins. So, the other thing I recommend you do is get rid of your phone. Most people use their mobile phone as an alarm, and that's a terrible idea. Get a cheap alarm clock, they cost next to nothing. Or if possible, get something like a Lumi light. It's a daylight and a sunset light. And it's brilliant for your circadian rhythms because you wake up with a nice warm glow and you go to bed with a sunset. But get an alarm clock and lose the phone. And the reason why is because when you use your phone, you unlock your phone and then you're plugged in. You have access to work's emails, you have access to things like WhatsApp. And the problem with that is you unlock your phone and you go, oh, work's emails, you scroll through work, and you're going to have a stress reaction to something that happened in the past. It's not now in your bedroom, but you're going to have a stress reaction as if it is right now in the bedroom. And you're going to produce stress hormones like cortisol. And cortisol is really, really bad. If you want to know more about stress hormones, put a comment in the video and I'll do a video on that. And then you might look at WhatsApp and you're looking at conversations, and they can be arguments or things you don't want to go to, or discussions with your partner, all kinds of crap. And then you have a stress reaction to that. You're like, oh, I've got to do this, got to get back to that person. I said I'd do this. And then you're probably going to doom scroll through Instagram or TikTok, and you scroll and scroll and scroll, and your brain's in neutral. Subconsciously, you're thinking, oh my God, I've got to get up. I'm going to be late. I'm going to be late. I'm going to be late. Come on, I need to get up. You're going to have a stress reaction to that. So you're going to have cortisol from thinking subconsciously you're going to be late. You're going to have cortisol from scrolling through WhatsApp and all the crap that contains. You're going to have cortisol from work's emails. And then you are going to get up and you are going to be late, and you're going to be stressed because you're late, and you're dumping more stress hormones in your body. So you're starting your day already overdosing on stress hormones. And like I said, if you want to know about stress hormones and why they're so bad to you, why they can ruin your libido, make you put on weight, make you lethargic, make you feel sick, put a comment in the video and I'll do a video on stress hormones. And it's a real problem. You've started your day from a very, very bad point. So if we do a gratitude practice, and all it is thinking of 3 things initially and then 5 things to be grateful for. Simple as that. I had a client that was so depressed, he said, well, I can't think of anything to be grateful for. I went, okay. How about being grateful for having carpet? It's something nice and soft for your feet to go on in the morning. How about being grateful for having a tap with fresh running water that you can have access to whenever you feel like? How about being grateful for having a kettle that can boil that water and you can have a fresh cup of tea anytime you like? How about being grateful for your feet, for all the amazing places your feet have taken you? How about being grateful for your eyes, for all the amazing views you've seen from the places your feet have taken you? See, gratitude isn't about finding things to be grateful for. It's about noticing things to be grateful for. When you start noticing things to be grateful for, you start producing happy hormones. Because like in the video you saw earlier of neurons firing and wiring together, you're wiring your brain for happiness. You're wiring your brain for gratitude, and you start producing serotonin. And serotonin is a really, really, really positive, mood enabling, mood stabilizing, happy hormone. The more you think of these 3 things, the more you think of other things, the more you pump your body full of serotonin in the morning. So then we're going to go to 5 things to be grateful for. And we're going to make the 5th a person or even a pet, but it's got to be someone that you love, even a pet that you love. And the reason for that is you then start producing oxytocin. And oxytocin is the love hormone. Oxytocin is the bonding hormone. It's the reason why people used to hang around the water cooler at work, because they'd be, the boss is an idiot. And it's that hormone that makes us bond and be tribal. Oxytocin is the love hormone. Back in the caveman days, we had oxytocin so that the 2 adults would stay together, because the likelihood of an infant surviving is far greater with 2. One can hunt and gather, one can look after the infant. Oxytocin is a magnificent mood stabilizer, but it also works remarkably well with serotonin. But here's the cool thing. It's difficult for stress hormones to be present when there's happy hormones. So you're starting your day on happy hormones, not stress hormones, just by thinking happy things. But here's the most amazing thing that nobody talks about in the wellness space. And I think it's probably the best thing about doing a gratitude practice. There's a little spoken about thing called neural pruning. And neural pruning is absolutely fascinating. Your brain breaks down old pathways for efficiency to help you think better in the new way. Think of it as Netflix. When we look at Netflix, there's so much choice. You spend more time scrolling for things to watch than actually watching anything. If there were only 4 things, you would pick one like that, but you don't. There's too much choice. And the brain knows that because the brain knows how the brain thinks. So it starts dissolving and breaking down old neural pathways for the efficiency of the new ones. So just think about that for a minute. Your brain is going to turn down and break down and blur out your old habit loops for feeling negative, for feeling anxious, for having intrusive thoughts, and building stronger ones for happiness. So not only are you going to be pumping your body full of happy hormones, you're going to be limiting the stress hormones, and you're going to be making it harder for you to think limiting and stressful thoughts. How fascinating is that? All from sitting on the edge of your bed 5 minutes a day thinking of 5 things to be grateful for. So when people say, that sort of stuff doesn't work, yeah, it does. Physiologically, scientifically, peer-proven fact, it does. You're rewiring your brain for happiness. As you saw in the video, you're building permanent bonding synapse structures, neural pathways for happiness. That's giving your brain huge shots of happy hormones, turning off your stress hormones, and deleting your old neural pathways. How amazing is that? I'm Johnny. This is Zen Mindset. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to know more about stress hormones, if you want to know about anxiety and all that sort of waffly sort of stuff from a kind of sciencey, nerdy kind of way, put it in the video and I'll try and do more videos for you. All things be good. We'll speak soon. Hope you enjoyed the video.